Uh, wow. Is it working? Also, wait, I need to manage this thing before I have to hear myself. Uh, is it working? I guess. I hope so. I mean, it should be working now. There is no reason for this to be in any manner working. Anyway, uh, as of today, fourth, fourth day of the year, I guess. Uh, here we find ourselves again after. I was checking not a whole month at the very least in that sense. It has been less than a month since I came here last time, so that's at the very least a victory in that regard. Not not so much time spent doing nothing, I guess. But yeah, we're finally back. I guess I don't know. I I simply wanted to continue with what we were discussing for the last handful of solo streams, and yeah, it has been quite hard to guess, to find, to properly decipher where to go in terms of many of the things that I wanted to talk about, I guess, but I don't know. It has been so long. There are, as always, we can do, so to speak, a little bit of segments before truly starting with this. I have been thinking quite a lot, and it certainly is, at the very least, useful to say in many ways. There are different things that I wanted to mention in one way or another, and that is to begin with. I guess I, I, I think I have found a somewhat useful way to try and have anything that resembles consistency. I think I have found a proper way. I think so. The only problem is indeed it it is kinda demanding, and one of the many considerations that I have been having in general is I I don't want in any way to be here and to talk about this stuff. I think it is to a certain degree interesting to try it. It is quite a pleasurable experience, but at the same time, it is quite complicated to truly say with complete certainty that whatever we talk about here is on its own way something useful, I guess. It's it's not that it doesn't possess the capacity to be useful, but rather after a certain point, the circulation of information itself of what we are trying to talk about ends up going back to the beginning, and we end up mentioning stuff that has already been talked about, and there is no truly new creation instead of what is the stuff that we mention in any way. And I I do believe it is quite useful for something like the structure of Twitch is to assume that people has a completely empty mind, and that yeah, whatever you talk about today you will end up forgetting tomorrow somehow. But at the same time, it is kind of disrespectful to act based on all of that stuff on the other end of this whole history, and to believe that it is, I wouldn't say recommended, it is in in general accepted, or it should be seen as something acceptable, let's say, to not truly move forward in any of the things that we talk about. And this in itself is a big concern because what is truly the point of what we, at the very least in these particular spaces, try to have a minimal type of dialogue, so to speak, if in the end the whole thing about trying to apprehend some possible idea that might in any way be useful and the chances in general of having a minimally fruitful observation about any kind of thing end up being reduced to almost nothing because once again what I already said, we simply go back and forth instead of the very same things, and there is nothing to gain in being here every day and repeating the exact same stuff. There is, I think I have, to a certain degree, one of the many discussions that I had last year with one of my particular superiors was, yeah, I guess that certainly different disciplines have, so to speak, an observable degree of mastery by which you can declare, so to speak, that it is fine to not try and elaborate anything new anymore. But we are not here to begin with. The first and foremost thing, this is in no way something formal. This doesn't need to adhere to such rules. It doesn't make sense to say, yeah, you know what? Simply because in other cases it seems to be the acceptable thing, or it seems to be the expected thing, I guess, to not truly say anything at all about anything that could be potentially considered, at the very least, enabling, so to speak, knowledge. If, if there is no necessity of having something like that, we can certainly keep on dwelling on the same stuff over and over again. But it has no such a structure. We are not here. I think so. One of the many fun things out this whole, I guess, experiment of trying to present information and trying to do it in the way in which we do it here, at the very least, of a very, yeah. I don't personally like to even try to talk about the whole process of creation of whatever happens inside of here. I think besides being obviously something personal, it is unnecessary to say, wow, yeah, it takes some time to consider what we are going to talk about, and it takes some determination to finally go on and try to minimally say anything that feels on its own, I guess, yeah, meaningful, quote unquote. It's, I should be expecting if maybe, yeah. Now that I say it out loud, perhaps it is kind of stupid, perhaps, but the reality is, it is kind of insulting to say that the average person might as well not be capable of interpreting that by themselves. You you shouldn't be needing to get told by somebody else that indeed what you end up getting is not completely careless. Yeah, a completely careless creation by somebody who has no regards for the product itself that you end up getting. It is in many different ways something that tries minimally to justify its own existence throughout the possibility of having, to some degree, properly assisted, I will guess, in the proper discussion of things, of obviously whatever is it that we end up talking about here. The problem is it, it is by default an overly general, or yeah, I guess an over generalization, so to speak. There are already too many things that could, in one way or another, apply to what we end up talking about. There are too many things that are in different ways interesting to consider, and there are, I guess, if there is to be a problem recognized, that there isn't simply one particular field that gets mentioned here. There is something quite funny about seeing this whole trajectory of discussions and whatnot, because if you were to try and collect everything that we have talked about throughout the year, perhaps you will end up finding out that, I don't know, maybe besides the tag itself of philosophy, the most easy thing to recognize, so to speak, this whole terminology of, yeah, this pertains to the order of philosophical discussions, which in reality, in many different ways, in the present, is very meaningless. Saying that something is philosophical is, I don't, yeah, I don't like that it needs to be reminded. People already knows that philosophy itself isn't nowadays any meaningful tag. There are very few people in the present who do philosophy, and the philosophy that gets created in the present has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. Is in no way as simple as what we do here. If it were that simply standing like we do in this moment, and try to talk about the different situations, and try to do it in the way that happens here, philosophy will be such an incredibly widespread type of field. It isn't in the least the correct tag to utilize, but reality is, for the sake of an easier time trying to classify whatever is it that anybody does in general, in this case, it is accepted that, yeah, perhaps this has to some degree something to do with philosophy. And because, yeah, I mean, at some point it feels bad to be overly honest. One of the funny things is, even in honesty, there are possible ways to say things without being so hurtful. But I cannot find those proper words without staying here like, I don't know, 5 minutes in complete silence, and I don't come here to be silent. I guess I t- that's that's not the point particularly of why I decided to talk about anything, to be particularly avoidant of saying stuff. So after having said that, continuing with the point itself, that was, be it that people likes it or not, the tag of philosophical discussion means nothing. Besides that initial type of assumption, we have now into more quote unquote proper fields that go to different, so to speak, areas that I end up unavoidably utilizing to inform the discussions that we have here. And that's when the real problem starts. And based on more correct terminologies and more correct fields, at the very least, from a personal perspective, I can identify without even trying to go particularly onto schools of thought of any of them. As I have always said, I have an interest in psychology. I cannot avoid mentioning to some degree psychological stuff. It is unavoidable to end up, so to speak, embedding the message that you create as the emitter of said idea with the different perspectives that you personally consider interesting, even if what you are saying doesn't need to be on any level so involved with your personal perspectives. It doesn't mean that it is completely negative. It is, I guess, part of the human experience that you will end up saying stuff that to some degree or another modifies and, so to speak, complicates even more what you talk about. Certainly, it is to be expected to find the stuff of that sort happening, but reality itself is, in in this case, you don't really need to be so incredibly biased towards what you like, and I can't avoid to be of the sort who does it. I certainly, I am saying that in hopes to explain. Yeah, I don't want to. I guess it could even be considered a problem that the over explanation about the different things that are in no way easily accessible make it even harder to comprehend anything. Even more the different type of discussions that we are trying to hold here to any degree. Not because it is bad to talk about many different ideas, but because, particularly inside of the school of psychology, there is a very funny thing that is, and I say, okay, yet another quick note. I guess I don't say that because, wow, everywhere else that's not a problem. No, first-hand experience, incredibly noticeable problem, at the very least for me, instead of the, I don't know, academical world that I had been consciously exploring the most. It is a whole collection of useless terminology. And when you try to apply that onto a place like this one, you end up finding out that indeed it is going to be hard or complicated for somebody to understand what's being talked about because there are too many things that resemble one another and there are too many different types of terminologies, ideas, different categories, and whatnot that are overly intertwined or that are unnecessarily separated. And it is, having to be honest, I guess, it is an epistemological type of problem. It is an incredibly negative reality that nowadays what we are trying to have is in no way something enjoyable. Not because it is in general a bad type of science or whatever. No, the problem is there is no interest in having concise and clear definitions, and so trying to bring any of those things here and only end up making it even harder to get truly what the point is. It's starting with that, I guess, onto one of the many different things that we, to some degree or another, discuss inside of here. Psychologically speaking, it is kind of a failure so to speak, that we try to talk about stuff, and unavoidably, because of the nature itself of, I guess, the whole set of schools that create the systems themselves of knowledge as a whole that are nowadays validated, it can't be an easily performed task. Or, I guess, being honest, probably it isn't even enjoyable to some degree. At which point, making it incredibly confusing with the different type of, once again, the point in this particular case is the whole dialect utilized instead of the different type of sciences. First hand, talking about psychology, the only thing that I can minimally say I recognize that, because I am trying to traverse that myself, it is embarrassing to see it happen. That whatever is it that we are trying to say will unavoidably end up being affected, not by the message itself, by the receiver of the message in a negative way, but by the medium in which it is emitted, in terms of what gets said has so many different interpretations that are completely outside of the perceivable range of possibilities, that it means nothing nowadays to try and be concise or be incredibly specific with what you are saying. Not because by default it is meaningless, but because the whole system around the ideas that we are trying to discuss enables it so that it somehow is accepted to not have any clarity whatsoever about what is the initial idea and what might be in many different ways the goal with what you are saying, or the, I guess, not just the purpose behind the actions, but rather any possible interpretation that might lead to any kind of gained advantage. The point itself is in 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 this whole existence of this channel, the possibility of creating something that is by itself useful, even if it is unavoidably related to stuff that is in some way or another unavoidably complicated. Even if it is like that, it doesn't mean that it cannot have the possibility of being enjoyable, or the possibility of being, to some degree, more digestible. But, once again, at the very least, in some particular fields, it seems to be accepted that there is no need for clarity. There is no need for a unionized type of system of ideas that can enable it to be more of a concise and a clear science, so to speak. So, if I guess it is in general something that might as well need to be accepted by anyone, if you are trying to talk about these things, you will unavoidably have to accept that indeed the message gets completely lost in the outside, so to speak. Yet, I think it is, at this point, it should be evident. Uh, Next type of field that has any influence instead of the discourse that you end up hearing here, semiotics, unavoidably. But instead of that, because we're talking about discourse and whatnot, the whole discourse, or the whole idea that gets created, the main message, the moment in which it is emitted, thanks to how the whole system has been arranged so far inside of this has no possibility of getting a properly clear grip and purposefully shaped final receiver because there are so many different ways in which things might as well be interpreted in any possible manner that it leads almost always to negative consequences, not because the thing itself that you are saying is bad, or the discussion itself that you are trying to have is something incomprehensible, but rather because, as I have been trying to say so far, there are so many different things that play such a huge and important role inside of this whole array of things that you unavoidably will have to deal with the reality of, yeah, indeed, all of this is perhaps impossible to accept in terms of what was the author truly trying to say. I have no way of guessing correctly and therefore reaching, so to speak, the quote unquote proper point that was trying to be made by the author because there is no one clear type of language that enables such a thing to happen. And I yeah, I don't know. I don't. I am only mentioning, we have simply mentioned two different fields that to some degree inform the theories that we talk about here and inform the whole discourse that ends up getting created. Inside of that, there is also unavoidably, I think so, sociology. It is indeed something very funny to not accept that there is such a sociological implication behind anything that we talk about here. But inside of that, once again, we're only so far focusing on the reality of the only field for which I feel like I can minimally try to talk with some type of previously already created and properly informed by the experiences type of discourse, something that has so minimal validity behind it because it comes from a place of knowledge. And inside of that, as I have been trying to say, the reality is it doesn't happen only in psychology. I wish it wasn't that way. I certainly would love for, I think, perhaps, yeah, it is an overly negative explanation to give, but social sciences themselves in general have a very wide array of problems. One of them is there is absolutely no care whatsoever about the proper creation of an easily interpretable, and I have already said that, concise, clear, unionized language that everybody can agree on, with proper terminologies and different ways of referring to the ideas themselves that do not need to be revised almost on a, I wouldn't say daily matter, but on a yearly basis to try and observe if truly what is being talked about is perhaps not yet another unnecessary and obviously confusing name given to the topic at hand that is being talked about. Type of name or type of definition. It, it is in general social sciences have this incredibly huge problem of nobody truly cares about what are, or not that nobody cares. There is no proper way so far that we can deal with the problem of terms are overly confusing. If you're trying to talk about the ideas themselves, they are all in general overly confusing. And it is, as a rule of thumb, I guess, expected that what you're going to be talking about will be unavoidably out of nowhere related to other stuff. Something incredibly funny. Something the reality is exacerbating. Something unavoidably horrible is to realize that out of nowhere, what we end up talking about, what somebody tries to talk about, has already been said with a different terminology, with a different type of point of view, but the main idea itself has already been created. And the problem is not that, oh wow, it shouldn't be promoted that people create and arrives and discusses things because they want to. It is not in regards to censoring people's opinion. It is in in the sense of it should be expected that you are going to respect the time of other people as much as you want others to respect yours. It cannot happen. It shouldn't be happening, so to speak, that the things that we try to talk about here end up being negatively affected by overly confusing languages. And that is the whole point of what I was trying to get at. That horribly enough, no matter how hard we try here, there is no point in which, in the final analysis, the product that ended up being created out of the, I guess, common efforts exerted by every single individual present here are by themselves sufficient enough to create a wholly properly interpretable message. That's the final concise ways to say it. There is no way in which what we talk about can be, to any degree whatsoever, called, or not called, assumed to be easily interpretable by anyone. It doesn't happen, and it won't happen, because funny consequence of having so little regulations in terms of the way in which this type of sciences is performed. Unavoidably, you're going to be having people talking about the same shit for 300 years in a row without realizing that no, it isn't necessary at all to change terminology. You simply need to define one that works well and adhere to that one specific type of term and nothing else. That's the whole problem of trying to talk about these things. I something even funnier. Maybe 300 years from now, something even more wonderful will have happened, and that is anything that was talked about today will be completely obsolete because it doesn't mean anything right now. What we are trying to discuss, if in the end, unavoidably, it is going to get replaced by yet another wave of resignifications of the very same thing, the exact same idea. The concept is the same. If you need a clear example, okay, we are talking about the world of perfect shapes and ideas that is referenced by people like Plato, Aristotle, out of nowhere, you're trying to give it a different in reality to an idea that can be easily classified as one thing. You're trying to give it every other day a different type of terminology, so to speak. It cannot have one and no more types of being called. No, 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 no. It needs to have as many as possible, and it needs to be comprised of as many overly complicated, not connections even, because that's the funny thing. It isn't a system based on the interconnectivity of ideas themselves. It isn't. There is something wonderful about trying to study stuff and realizing that different theories inform one another and there is no clear pathway created between them because nobody is interested in accepting that indeed you are not creative and you are not the singular individual that you believe to be. You end up unavoidably referencing what has been already said by others, and you end up unavoidably adding a bit of what you already quote unquote discovered. Knowledge that was given to you, conclusions that can be made by anyone, realizations that anybody is capable of following, and connection of ideas that are perhaps in general the assumed things. Nobody cares about that particular side of the discussion. It is better to say, yeah, you know what, this whole system, it is going to be better if we were to assume that indeed nobody is going to highly benefit from trying to make it clear. What's the point in trying to make it clear? It is acceptable to, yeah, indeed, here we have no clarity. So, going back to the point, I have almost 40 minutes racing, I guess, at this point, about the state of a matter that want to be changed, at the very least today. It was simply excuses, I guess, to say, and yeah, luckily enough, no matter how much we try, it won't truly be all that accessible for anyone. It isn't an accessible field in general. And besides that, yeah, if you are trying to care, know that this isn't simply comprised of what I already mentioned before philosophical discussion. No, a short, concise way of saying it. I love you if you say philosophy, but you're wrong. This isn't philosophical discussion. This isn't in any way something pertaining the soul of the human or whatever you want to try and classify it as. This is informed by other fields. It doesn't mean that I personally do not enjoy. Yes, but it has nothing to do with that. The reality is different fields that do inform what are the main points of what we are trying to talk about here. Clearly depart from philosophy. And I guess not because of a sense of shame, but rather because we are not living in the 1500s. There are more than enough sciences advocated to the creation of proper knowledges, even if, in general, I have been already talking long enough about the problem of a lack of proper terminologies, even with that being the reality, it is still a possibility for anyone who wishes and who is interested in that to find something useful and to be capable of obtaining anything minimally interesting in terms of what you might gain from different sciences that came after philosophy unavoidably. But yeah, anyway, um, why did I even start discussing this? Besides the obvious excuses, yeah, you supposedly need to give people some time. I don't remember. At this point, I don't remember. So, perhaps that's that. We can discard it. But yeah, yeah, I think it was something along the lines of trying to create more consistently anything, and the departure of responsibility from what could be created, taking into consideration that unavoidably, whatever is it that we try to create here is by default going to be affected by the very same biases that the different sciences themselves, which inform the theory, already have. It won't happen. It is only a wish, and a completely naive and unfulfillable wish, that whatever we talk about here will be as easily accessible as one wishes for it to be. As it happens with the very same, as I already said before, sciences, the whole array of interpretations possible is going to be so wide that no matter what the individual itself who is trying to create the message tries, there are no enough tools in place to enable, so to speak, the correct interpretation of what is being said. So yeah, good luck getting to know what's the point of what I am trying to talk about. That's the point basically. Or I guess with same words or same idea, different words. Good luck grasping at the concept when the different informing theories are by themselves, sorry, so incredibly widespread. Now, anyways, almost, yeah, 43 minutes. I think that's enough of an introduction. I want to, I already said that before, and at this point I don't even feel like discussing that. Uh, just quick note, perhaps I have found a way in which we can have some type of consistency. I remember mentioning that at the beginning. Perhaps we can try to have some later on. Uh, but yeah, the reality is always I simply need to commit to it, and there is something I guess very fun about all of this collective creation. It is perceived as negative to be, I will say, to care about the other person on the other end who tries to talk about these things. It would be fantastic if it was more acceptable to say, yeah, why is the person who tries to talk about anything, in this particular case, I guess it should be easily understandable that I am trying to refer to myself, not to anyone else. But if the person who tries to convey a message is failing at delivering that, or is not being consistent enough at doing it, I live in an era in which I can literally pick up my phone and tell them, and I have that possibility, and I might as well try to embrace it as something highly enabling in terms of I can get literally what I wish for from the people who I like in terms of different knowledges, different fields of already conceived ideas and minds who have already digested enough what I particularly myself am trying to get at, yet I don't have an obligation to do that. I am in no way capable of caring for the person on the other end who is failing to deliver what I particularly see as interesting. I guess it would be certainly easier if, so to speak, the receiver of information tried minimally to act like it cares a little bit more. And not, wow, you're truly trying to say that you do not care. No, 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 no. Because it is already accepted, at the very least in this point, it is already accepted that there is a, so to speak, generalized type of interest on what anybody tries to talk about. It is already perceivable, okay? We are not assuming that it doesn't exist. That is the reality. The problem is, but nobody is willing to say when the topic itself that is trying to be talked about doesn't get properly covered, when the one who talks doesn't provide enough information, there is no one responsible of saying, yeah, you're failing. You're trying to fulfill one role and you're failing at that. Can you please do your job properly? Can you minimally try to act like you care about this one thing that you are trying to discuss and properly reorient yourself towards this one side? Nobody does that. And nobody seems to have an interest in fulfilling that position. And on the other end, it is accepted that it is going to happen. So nobody cares either if on the other end there is nobody to correct what is the easily overcomable problems behind the creation of any particular idea, or the discussion of any particular topic, which might be performed highly inefficiently slash incorrectly. So yeah, the point itself was, I guess I will have to keep guessing if the direction that we are taking is in any way the correct one or not. No way to know that by oneself at this point. But yeah, anyway. Yeah. Timeout. No, I remember there was a command that I used to use in the past that was something like timestamp. What was it? What mark marker? Ah, marker. Yeah, marker. I think I don't need to classify what the marker is. I simply could send it, right? I didn't need to. Yeah, okay. There it is. Marker created. Anyway, nothing else to add. Thank you very much. Please. Now, let's getting angry at the void and what we came here for. Uh, Main discussion. Let me drink some water. Consider it a minimal break. Let me drink some water, and after that we get on topic finally. Thank you very much. But yeah. So anyway, We are trying to remember where we were last time. This whole thing is to speak a discussion about human efforts, about what it means in general to try, and the different array of systems themselves that in general act around any particular individual interests, so to speak. And now, quick, short, easy justification for this title, fourth episode, so to speak. Knowledge. We already talk about education. Why are we talking about the same thing yet again? What is going on? Is the main question basically. I I discovered something very funny that was after considering a bit the handful last of things that we already talked about, it being an incredibly general description, an incredibly basic discussion about how the possibility of getting properly educated about the stuff is more than enough. And finally, considering or taking into consideration societies themselves, there is something quite funny to be said, and that is conclusion. Luckily enough, in the present world, um, there is not enough interest out of proper education, and the systems themselves, which already exist to sustain anybody who tries to get educated, fail to do so, and are incapable of providing anyone with enough resources so that they are capable enough of creating something truly beneficial for society as a whole, I guess. So it needs to be this whole idea of knowledge needs to be addressed by itself rather than just to say, wow, yeah, you need to be inside of the educational system. To a certain extent, yeah, it sadly, or luckily enough, once again, yet another consequence of the present world is if you're not part of the main system that arranges the different things that exist around us, you are in no way going to get enough social validation that allows you to perform the different activities that you want. Not authoritarian validation, I think it is called. The one that basically lets you do what you wish. Not the social validation that has around you, so to speak, a degree of maybe what you are doing is wrong, but the type of validation that literally decides in the wholeness of society if what you, from a personal perspective, are pursuing or not is in any manner something that can be called useful and that can be therefore called necessary, something that has real influence over your actions, basically. Some the type of validation that can, if you were to not possess it, properly create a subsystem of people that could very easily go against whatever it is that you are trying to do and disable completely the goal which you are trying to aspire to in terms of removing you from that possibility. As in, I guess, without trying to be so vague, the type of validation that can very easily make or destroy a career. That type of validation, I guess. Why is it important to any degree? Why are we discussing this? This this was a very funny thing to realize, and I guess so late into this whole discussion because you should assume, or you would naturally assume that we live in the modernity. One of the many things that happens is you are a modern human being. Therefore, you are part of a world that dares to call itself modern. Therefore, something that should happen is that modernity means, besides the most epistemologically simple definition of the present era, it also has the embedded meaning of the times in which things get sufficiently advanced enough so that in societies themselves, the individuals who comprise the societies are given quote unquote equal opportunities. That doesn't happen. That is in no way the case. And that is, as of right now, the reality of anyone who tries to deal with this stuff. You cannot gain, so to speak, in the modern world. Many different many different of the social games that are being presently played. If you were to assume that, yeah, you're being provided everything that you need. One of the funny things is basically that the whole lie of being a modern world makes it look like you are going to be certainly given everything that will allow you. In this case, we're talking about human efforts. Will allow you to have proper aspirations and to be capable of achieving what you wish. That's the whole point of this discussion. I don't even have a proper explanation as to why it happens that way, but yeah, in the present era, it doesn't happen that we have created or we have gained everything needed to easily make and arrange the stuff in order to find ourselves thriving, so to speak, in this whole world of ideas and this whole world of different souls trying to move themselves towards any one direction. It, it is not at present the conceivable reality that, yeah, we are aiming towards somewhere collectively. And we have enough mechanisms that can allow anyone who is aspiring towards those different positions to attain them. The problem, instead of this, or the notion that needs to be talked about is, and because that is the case, knowledge itself becomes a more complicated matter and a more complicated subject than what it should be, truly. The reality is, trying to start finally the discussion, in the present world, if you were to have any kind of interest on whatever is it that you call meaningful, as in so far the modernity has brought us to be knowledge, which should be already conceived as a basis for progress. I don't know if I should be defining at this point knowledge. It should be obvious enough. I will say I don't want to. and I want to do it, but just in case, we will assume something. We will assume that somehow we have not yet defined what is knowledge, and we will assume that it is somehow necessary to define something that can't be so easily defined. So, parentheses, knowledge being the different type of ideas, notions, impressions that can allow any particular individual to strive and to correctly be capable of dealing with the situations that present themselves in the lives of that individual in regards to the goal that they have. And, so to speak, it is the enabling circumstances that create that pathway forward, as in, so to speak, this generalized type of traces that, when looking back, can be called the way, quote unquote, that is a sort of definition of knowledge. Final parenthesis, thank you. Um, Now, as I was trying to say, knowledge shouldn't be something so hard, and it shouldn't be something so complicated to define. It shouldn't be something so incredibly hard to grasp, and something that shouldn't be seen as unnecessary. It once again, basing ourselves on that very same definition, it should be a logical conclusion by anyone that, yeah, indeed, if you have any goal, the title of this whole series is Human Efforts. If you are striving towards somewhere, you should be interested in possessing enough knowledge so that the thing towards which you are moving will be properly accomplished. If you're of that kind of people, it should be a logical assumption for you, or not for you, for anyone, that yeah, indeed, you will get the opportunity to discover and to enjoy whatever is it that creates and enables that path forward, and that it is going to be an easily accessible one. But despite the types of adjectives used to describe reality in this world, as of today, indeed, the acquisition of knowledge is in a hugely ignored problem, I will say. Not because it is by itself something negative, it is a necessity. It is something that anybody should be capable of seeing as obligatory to have. The problem resides in, but nobody has so far defined the easiest way to obtain something like this. So it becomes an overly confusing thing to try and talk about. Because out of nowhere, you end up finding, be it earlier or later in life, that yeah, indeed, whatever is it that you are trying to deal with has not been properly documented. There is not enough information about the things that you are trying to talk about. There are not proper structures in place so that you could easily navigate the thousands upon thousands already created schools of thought around that one thing towards which you are striving. So knowledge becomes an overly confusing thing to try and talk about at that point. It regresses, I guess, to a sort of mystical notion and overly complex idea which can barely be called an accessible one in many different ways, simply because nobody has a meaningful and easily recognizable way to define knowledge as. This, then, why should be a concern besides the negative side? Because anybody who stops to think about such a problem might as well reach the same conclusion, despite how unnecessarily overcomplicated it has become. It can still be reached. The first conclusion. One of the funniest things about the present is, and no matter how little effort there is by the surrounding society about the proper creation of easily accessible knowledge, anybody can obtain and anybody can harness enough information, and anybody can harness enough data, and anybody can, more than anything else, with that information, arrive to proper conclusions, arrive to the conclusions that they wish to, so to speak. I mean, for a second, distracting ourselves. If it weren't so easy, we wouldn't have so many people utilizing that very same concept, sorry, for negative things like misinterpreting and deconst- deconst- decontextualizing information and changing the way in which it is desired to be interpreted as, just to inform their particular theories and to modify certain narratives. It wouldn't be such an easily observable problem, and it wouldn't be such a widespread reality that, yeah, indeed, you can, because of how things are arranged nowadays, you can literally take what other people have said and create, based on that, your own personal message. And I will go as far as to say, certainly, continuing with this previous example, and you can even do it in ways in which it ends up looking like, and what other people said, even if they literally never knew you, seems to agree with what you personally are saying, and seems to support what you are talking about. Once again, even if you literally have zero contact with the original creator, so to speak, of any particular idea. But anyway, we are not here to focus on the negative. The point is, thanks to such a system, at the very least, in the present era, therefore, it has become somewhat accessible for anybody. This whole array of things that end up leading to the acquisition of knowledge, and it ends up becoming something I would certainly say useful enough and easily interpretable enough for anybody who tries to get about it. Because the reality is, there are so many different things in regards to ideas and such that if you were to try and properly make a correct description, you'll end up finding out. Indeed, there are too many places from which you can take bits and foundations to later on move by yourself to the conclusion that you're looking for. It's in that sense, it's not so hard to understand. Now, another problem, another easily identifiable problem. One of the funny things about knowledge is, and also, luckily enough, in the present, it takes too much time to identify useful knowledge that will assist in the creation of whatever is it that you're aiming for, or that will enable further down the road your efforts. It has certainly become so far in the present such a widespread problem that no matter what you try, you will need to be ready to deal with thousands upon thousands of hours of knowledge if you were to try to truly try and create or strive towards something complex, so to speak. I guess you can only justify it as useful in terms of, luckily enough, because you will have to survey and personally determine the quality of so much information. You will learn to have a more critical eye, and you will learn which things are useful and which things are completely useless towards the creation of this one thing that you have in mind. But it isn't in any way something so easily accessible and something so simple as we try to make it look like in many terms, sadly. And I don't think it truly is by itself such a problem, such a negative problem, but it is, I guess, the proper definition will be it is such a heavy load in many different ways that it ends up meaning no matter which goal you have, the acquisition of proper knowledge is going to be perhaps one of the hardest parts of the whole journey. And I one of the things I already started this with mentioning that, and one of the things that wanted me just to start talking about this knowledge by itself without just the educational system as the main promoter of it. It is because in reality, sadly, there is also something funny enough happening, and that is sometimes in the institutions who should be interested in knowledge get a little next to zero about all of this stuff. Nobody is truly interested in having compendiums of what can truly be called useful information, informative enough information, easily accessible, easily interpretable enough information. We have kind of dropping a little bit the sarcasm. We have entered an era in which somehow it happens that there is so much data accessible to anyone who wishes to explore the already collected information, yet it is equal to nothing what it means. We have started to collect so much information that nobody truly cares for. We don't even have real purposes behind collecting data. People can spend their whole lives on things that no one truly cares about. Not that they do it because they personally care, no. Not even themselves have a proper explanation as to why they are doing the things that they are doing, why they are spending so much time on the things that they are spending it on. It is an all complicated way of living, and it is an incredibly obnoxious way of finding how reality ended up working in the present era. But it is kind of liberating, I guess, when you realize that, yeah, indeed, what we pursue so much, this whole idea of knowledge and whatnot, is in no way so easily attainable. And it doesn't need to be such a bad thing by itself, I guess. But the conclusion after so much time ends up being that maybe it should be a concern, you know? Maybe you should be trying to pay attention to it. Maybe your efforts are not going to be corresponded with equal things. Maybe what we are doing is not going to go anywhere because there is not enough easily accessible realities. Yet, parenthesis, yet another definition of this is of knowledge is knowledge can be called what we have already identified of reality, what we have already realized as a fundamental part of the world. If you don't have knowledge about something, it is safe to assume that basically you have no way of properly navigating that part of life because you literally don't know. It isn't a complex definition at all. So, end parenthesis, I guess, in the in that very same line, it is to be expected that in fields where there has been almost no effort to reach proper conclusions, no matter what you do, it is going to be incredibly hard to move forward. You might as well be living even in an area, so to speak, of present ideas in which there is no easily definable forward. How can you even say what is forward if you have so little idea about what created the rest of your supporting structures? And I guess that's kind of the end of that one particular idea. Continuing into something different. And funnily enough, societies themselves don't care. There is a very wrong concept about, yeah, society will sort itself out, mathematically speaking. No, one of the worst things that you can do is to assume that people will, out of nowhere, change the ways in which they experience reality out of nowhere. Proper knowledge is what informs our actions. Justifications is what moves you towards doing different things. Rational explanations are one of the easiest ways to change behaviors, so to speak. You cannot assume that out of nowhere things are going to take a change for the better. And why is this the point? Because you say, yeah, societies don't care about knowledge. Yeah, but perhaps in the future they will. Based on what? You're not even going to try and help on that. Based on what can you even say that they are going to care out of nowhere? Based on such an assumption that out of nowhere, once again, the heart of millions of human beings will change the way in which they have functioned for already generation upon generation based on that. And that sounds rational enough to say, yeah, out of nowhere, people will understand that it is useful to care about knowledge. Let's say, different example, same concept. In the future, people will stop drinking. I am not doing anything to assist people to drink less. But out of nowhere, I know that in the future they will stop drinking. Certainly, they must have created in the future a way to never again drink. I mean, as long as we are trying to take action, trying to involve ourselves with the rest of the surroundings, moving ourselves into social problems that are being observed, unless that happens, it means nothing to say, yeah, in the future perhaps things will get better. Based on what? You are doing nothing for such a future. It is out of nowhere, you're abandoning all the responsibilities that you should be taking on right now and saying, yeah, in the future people will be less depressed. Once again, same concept, different example. In the future, people will stop having so many problems regarding their mental safety, mental health, if you want to define it as that. I know that will happen. What are you personally doing to assist on that? Nothing? Yeah, but I cannot do anything. Have you even tried? I mean, I would accept that from somebody who has spent their whole life trying to change a system that has proven to be completely against any shape of modifications. Unavoidably, that is somebody to take seriously and somebody whose opinion is useful. But you, somebody who never tried to change anything, your opinion is needed? You think you're incorrect by saying, yeah, in the future, things will get better. I am doing nothing to change them, but things will get better. I guess, I mean, okay, but police, shut up. You don't need to keep spending oxygen, I guess, will be the proper way to continue with that. There is such a need to say, yeah, this person said something interesting. No, no, you didn't. You didn't say anything. You didn't assist in any way. You didn't add any bit to what is the real problem, so to speak. You're literally abandoning your responsibility. Whole topic that we are talking about, trying to give it a proper shape. Human efforts. You're completely disregarding your possibility for strives. You're completely abandoning the chance of whatever is it that you try to do as being useful for others. And out of nowhere, it becomes a problem of society as a whole. The big evil entity of society is against change. Have you even tried to change it? It's so. I mean, final word on that. If it isn't understandable enough, yeah, such cases are stupid, and it is unavoidable to also fall prey of such a way of thinking, but it is completely meaningless. That's the reality. It doesn't change anything. I think so. It doesn't in any way modify anything. I don't know, man. Also, good morning. First hour. I hope you're doing well. Ah, ah, here we are talking about human efforts. Wow. Ah, eating what? What? Ah, very good. I guess. I mean, I don't know. I guess if we had to be real, perhaps the association of such basic instincts is indeed satisfactory enough, you know? After all, you get the pleasure of the most basic need being satisfied itself. It will be, let's say it like this. If that's all we gonna do, perhaps we will be happier. I think one of the many conclusions that I think everybody can agree on is thinking is kind of hurtful, kind of annoying. It being a rational animal makes it so that out of nowhere reality is more than just eating, sleeping, reproducing, and doing such until your life expires. So yeah, eating is fine. But yeah, I I don't know, man. It's it's quite crazy, I guess. But yeah, have a nice chicken. I don't know. I guess you said morning. I wouldn't guess that is your lunch or your breakfast, but it's food. Anyway, let me drink some water. But yeah, continuing. I think I know I didn't cover everything. I thought I already did before, and here we are going back on something that should have already been discussed. Yeah, okay. This this is the point. Something that I missed to say before. Funnily enough, um, this was the rational conclusion that anybody could reach after having observed second and third episode, education and society. Society doesn't care. Knowledge itself is something that serves the pursuit of anything. Society doesn't care about having a sufficiently enough, at the very least in the present, system that can allow for the education of the individuals to such a degree so that anybody can be certain that their different efforts are going to be rewarded enough. So, in terms of knowledge, wow, sudden revelation, incredible realization. The individual needs to be capable of justifying their actions in terms of striving towards knowledge that can be helpful for themselves. If it doesn't happen, that the individual tries in any way to see a logical path towards the creation and, so to speak, also the gain of knowledge, assume that it will never happen, that the individual will then gain something um, of any meaning in that sense. It's quite disappointing, but yeah, that's so far the reality, I guess. And also, welcome Andy. Happy New Year. Uh, wow. we have survived 2024. Now we have to survive 2025. Wow. Also, nah, better. I better don't say anything. Uh, but yeah, basically that. Welcome. That's all I can say. Welcome. But yeah, I don't know. It is kind of weird. I mean, in this whole topic, you will assume that it is something already accepted by everyone. That you should be taking responsibility for what you wish to obtain. But out of nowhere, I don't like to stop and try to think about why it happens. But it feels like certainly at some point the culture of the present world became such that you don't need to try to have anything meaningful, and you don't need to try and see in an independent adventure that doesn't need to be observed by everyone else. You don't need to have anything of that sort. You need, or what, so to speak, what you need will be provided by the rest of the society without any real justification. Just because you are a human being who exists, you're going to get, so to speak, spoon fed whatever you wish. It's it's a weird narrative, not because it simply exists. If it were to be the reality, it might be quite interesting to see. But the reality is completely different. The reality is, if you were to sit and wait for things to come, you will find out that the world doesn't change unless you try anything. People don't care about the stuff unless someone else is capable of expressing properly and reasonably enough a good justification as to why it is necessary to change certain thing, why it is necessary to try and affect certain thing. It's a weird thing because the narrative, so to speak, the dissonances that exist in the world, the narrative doesn't correlate at all with what you observe in the world. I don't even. I, what I say when I mean that it is horrible to look at that and I don't like to do it is because what's the point? Why was such a thing created? At which point did the individual say, yeah, I will accept that as my narrative? My world itself will revolve around something that I never see happening. I will assume, so to speak, once again, same concept, different example. I will assume that perhaps tomorrow I will buy the next lottery ticket and I will win. I have already bought 1,000 and I didn't win. But tomorrow I will get lucky and I will make it. I will somehow find it. That I everything worked in favor of my life. It literally hasn't happened before. Everybody who I know around me hasn't had that happen to them. I have no consistent basis to prove that what I believe is going to be a reality tomorrow. But you know what? I will do it anyways. Because, haha, I'm so clever. I, I, I don't get it. I literally don't get it. I, it's one of the weird things of observing reality, I guess. That out of nowhere you are confronted with such annoying dissonances. It's like, I mean, the problem unavoidably is because it's a complex subject. Certainly, it is something that is justified by something that is underlying. It is better to have faith that out of nowhere things will get better than to believe that you will need to sacrifice your whole life for the, a minimal, almost not noticeable change in the status quo of the problems that you perceive as so incredibly negative in life. What's the point of being so cynical is the real discussion. Sometimes I don't think reality is so wonderful in terms of, wow, yeah, you know what? You get everything that you wish for. No, no, certainly you don't. Nobody gets everything that they wish for. Literally nobody. But it's better to think that you will do and that you will be the lucky one because reality, at the very least, at first glance, if you don't develop, so to speak, your senses, seems to be horrible. One of the, on that very same line of knowledge, one of the many things that if you don't even try to stop and consider, out of nowhere, having problems is the worst thing that could happen to anybody. Life is itself already bad enough. Why would you even want to have a negative things happening to you? How can you even justify that something bad is happening, particularly to you, to those who are around you? What's the point of doing that? It is 1,000 times easier to place the blame on something else and to move forward with a completely negative view on life and with a completely negative way of thinking about the world that is around you. It is easier, not that it is better. In no way it is better. Once again, discussion is knowledge. You can learn for yourself. You don't need to get told by somebody who you literally will never know and who you don't even trust. Yeah, because something like bitterness is bad. No, you can go ahead and learn by yourself. That is one of the many wonderful things. If modernity has done anything correctly, it is at the very least the incredible accessibility of information. Sadly, or obviously, that's why also at the same time, the reader, so to speak, needs to develop the sense of a critical eye when they are reading anything. It also has opened the doors or the floodgates, so to speak, to waves upon waves of completely false and maliciously crafted misinformation, meaningless, useless. completely incorrect pieces of media that serve no good purpose, but it doesn't mean that you can't again still proper knowledge about the things that you care about, the stuff that you truly have an interest on. It doesn't in any way mean that that has to be the reality and that has to be the accepted world and nothing else. It's like, yeah, there is some false information out there. That's why I will disregard my position as somebody who might as well get all of the easily accessible knowledge about the things that I have always cared about, because there is a minimal potential about me getting shown something false. And I am obviously stupid enough so that I cannot learn how to identify and how to disregard, how to differentiate what is wrong and what is false from what is true and what is good. I cannot certainly do that, so I will better avoid altogether learning. That's the logical conclusion. That's my biggest discovery, and that is going to be my easiest action to take in this. Oh my god, so wretched the world. What? It's reality is in that sense, I guess, depressing. How can so many people abandon altogether their possibilities in that sense? It is okay. Once again, going back to what I already said, the educational system should be doing better. It should be assisting people to reach more easily and with more assistance their different goals in life. The human endeavors that anybody observes themselves shouldn't be something so individual. It should be so much more better to be capable of observing and having proper discussions about different wishes that anybody has in proper places. Even today, there is no place in which you can actually congregate with other people and say, yeah, you know what? I have this one dream in life. I have this one goal and I wish to obtain this one thing. That the most somewhat resembling structure that exists is something like the already existing ones of a job, an educational system itself, so to speak, and a university, places like that where you say, yeah, you know what? I want to get a degree. I want to get paid after doing my job. What happens after that? What happens after you get paid? What happens after you get your title? What happens after you get the child that you made, so to speak? What happens after that? Life isn't one single instance and nothing else. It is incredibly complex. It is something incredibly intertwined with everything else. It means nothing to simply say, yeah, you know what? I want the money. And after that, what do you do with the money? What do you get? On what do you use it? Are you going to be somewhat intelligent? And are you going to take care of yourself with that money? Are you going to self-indulge so much that you end up literally self-destructing due to how much you negatively affected yourself? What are you going to do with that? What's the point of the money? What's the point of having a family? Why do we want to have something like that? Why do we want to bring somebody else to this world? Are you even ready for that? I mean, there are so many things that we don't even have a proper structure for. Continuing with this, the human efforts themselves are something that would benefit a lot more if there were to be a proper institution that cared about that. But out of nowhere, or on the complete opposite end, you end up finding out that so far, modern world, you say, I have a dream, and that is equal to being a child? At which point is that acceptable? What kind of depressing reality are we living in that out of nowhere it is something fine to say, yeah, you know what? I aspire to something. What? What? Since when it is bad to have a dream, to want something good to happen, to so to speak, to look at the stars and to believe that someday you might as well be capable of reaching them. Since when it is seen as something oh so incredibly negative, and it is fine to live in such a reality. You don't need at all to fight against that. Once again, the best thing is really is not just that it exists. Reality is whatever we make of it. Whatever it is, or what is funnier is, yeah, it exists. And nobody tries to do anything about it. Oh, yeah, you know, the system is so oppressive. What? Do you even try to speak with people? Do you even have contact with others in terms of, yeah, everybody can agree that it is a problem. Do you try to talk with them about that or not? Sometimes it is such a self-defeating way of thinking. It doesn't stop being funny. Just at the point of, yeah, I have given up on society. I'm going to be selfish. Wow. The incredible realization. The human once again regresses back to complete selfishness. Wow. Clap, I guess. No, it doesn't end just there. It moves into, yeah, you know, and because society is so rich, there are so many little things that anybody can do about it. The world itself is an uncaring place. What? What are we even talking about? There is nothing more wonderful than to see that you can have a conversation about literally anything. There is nothing more surreal than reality itself. It is literally the place that enables any other fantasy to exist. And you are willing to say, yeah, you know, this place is so negative. This 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 world is so bad. I cannot have a dream. I cannot have a hope. I cannot look forward into the future. I cannot have any kind of any kind of goal. It is so impossible to have a goal nowadays. I have nothing around me that properly sustains me. And what if you don't? What how many people are blessed with the opportunity of having others who care at all? And at the same time, what does it even mean that somebody cares? Out of nowhere, you're under pressure because you're not performing properly. That's what you want. You need to have somebody remind you, besides your own self, how bad you are doing because you're not accomplishing the things that you said you were going to accomplish. And out of nowhere, that is going to be the narrative that everybody wishes for. We have literally one of the biggest moments of, so to speak, struggles with what is this whole concept of mental health because people are starting to realize, yeah, you're overwhelmed by the world, and you want out of nowhere to be made even more responsible by others. You want more people to care about what you dream of. You're literally in a point in time in which everything is somehow, luckily enough, arranged so that you can be incredibly crazy. You can say, yeah, I am going to aspire to this one thing that no one else might have been capable of accomplishing. And I will give it an honest shot. and I might have a real opportunity at accomplishing that, and nobody cares. Not that, wow, such an uncaring world. Nobody cares. You can try as many times as you want, and perhaps you have luck, and perhaps you realize that it isn't about luck. It is about creating a properly, easily followable enough plan so that you can accomplish something, and a feasible enough set of conditions so that reality can work itself out as long as you are doing the things that you need. That's the main foundation of having knowledge. That's the main necessary reason as to why anybody needs to spend their time learning stuff. What's the point behind saying, yeah, tomorrow tomorrow things will get better out of nowhere. Completely out of nowhere. I mean, I guess we all guess that you're right. It isn't like life isn't the climate itself. Life is so much more about being conscious and doing things that you yourself want. But yeah, let's give up all sense of agency that we have about existence out of nowhere. Everything is on the hands of everyone but me. You know, if I am happy, it is not my problem. My happiness needs to depend on everyone else. And not because I care, even because that would be wonderful if people cared for one another. No, because I need to be given this one tiny pill of yet again more incredibly wonderful entertainment. Wow. I need to be entertained. Yes, entertainment. Wow, entertainment for the sake of entertainment. Yes, so wonderful, so magnificent. I need to be that way, and I have something wonderful. It also is this whole notion of, and the symptom serves the patient, and I cannot change. I might have this problem. I cannot pay attention to one thing. I cannot be on one thing, I cannot stay. I cannot be disciplined. No, 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 no. I don't have a discipline problem. I have this condition. I have this problem. I have this negative thing. I have this struggle. You don't understand what's going on me. You are judging what I say. What? That's I I I guess okay. That's how it works nowadays. And nobody seems to bat an eye, nobody seems to even care, so it's fine. It can happen. That's the other side of the coin. Because nobody cares, stuff like that can and will keep happening. So many people are going to keep self destructing because, yeah, nobody cares after all about what you do. So you can take whichever direction you want, and you can have whichever consequence you want out your own life. And that basically means nothing because on the very same line of knowledge, nobody tries to think what does it truly mean to have consequences out existing and not doing anything productive with your own existence. What's the point about trying to think so far into the future? What why would you even try to think not about just yourself, but about perhaps you want to have a family, about the future of your children or of your grandchildren? What's the point of doing something like that? After all, you are going to die, and when you die, your consciousness ends. And if your consciousness ends, it might as well be the same as nothing else ever going to happen at all anymore. You haven't had enough experiences about people around you dies and you keep on living. Perhaps the very same thing with no, 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 no. It cannot be. You can't care. It is impossible for the human being to care about others. It has been today. It's the first day that it has been decided that it is impossible to care. That you're obliged to not care. I guess. I mean, it's such an incredibly nonsensical way of living reality. It is such an incredibly negative one. And the best thing is, and yeah, it's horrible. And tomorrow, you wake up and you say, holy shit, the world is so bad. Everything is so negative. Nobody cares. You have already been told nobody cares. You went out of nowhere. Everyone should say, yeah, the world is so bad. Nobody cares. There is no point in which things change direction if you don't try to take the lead, so to speak, instead of any of those things. This is literally the whole point of this human effort. Are you placing any effort onto anything? Are you informing yourself about the stuff? If not, it is incredibly easy to say, yeah, I don't have luck in one day waking up and having every single goal that I have being fulfilled out of nowhere. Every single wish of mine becoming a reality. I guess. But are you doing something? No, I cannot do anything. The world is so uncaring. There are so many bad things. There are so little people that care about whether what I do or don't. There are so many possible ways to obtain what I want. There is no future that is worth striving for. So I cannot do it. But I will keep complaining. I will keep on complaining and bringing everything else down. I will keep on doing that instead. I guess. I, I, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Certainly, I don't know. But yeah. Anyway, I kind of deviated from the point like 10 minutes ago, probably like 20 minutes ago. Uh, the point itself was really knowledge. It isn't so hard to gain. Luckily enough, in the very society of the present, it is easily accessible. I would say with 100% rate of accuracy, if you have the possibility of hearing this, then it means that yeah, you are free enough to learn out what you care about truly. That's not so hard to make conclusion. They, so to speak, yeah, there are incredibly oppressive places. If you're not living in one of them, you will not even have the possibility of hearing somebody like me speak. You wouldn't even be given the chance of informing yourself about the stuff that is useful enough and that is sufficiently inspiring enough even to maybe even create a revolution. So yeah, in those places, messages of this sort are already censored. If you have the opportunity of hearing something like this, it means that yeah, it isn't late already. You still have time to take any kind of action. You still have time to hope, I guess. That's the better way to say it. Not oh wow, yeah, political action. The human is in the end a political animal. No, no. Don't be so delusional, I guess. You can take action for the better. You can do something interesting for yourself. And you can do something fulfilling. Besides, oh wow, yeah. You know, I'm going to get angry at random yet again today for the X thousand cycle. I am going to do this thing that I know annoys me, and I will be going to complain, and I will clap at the end of the day, when I have accomplished nothing, that's the main goal of existence, I guess. No, it isn't. It isn't. But nobody cares. Anyways, so you can define it as whatever you want. Anyway, I don't know. I kinda run out of ideas. Partially also because there isn't that much to really say. Like, sadly enough, there are very wide overgeneralizations made here, and more which with each of these chapters. So yeah, I cannot truly say anything in particular like, oh yeah, you should go and study this one author. I guess I don't know, knowledge on the topic of knowledge. Everybody should try and minimally invest themselves on something. I hate once again. I hate the word philosophical at this point. It means nothing. Eh, Anybody should try to read people who try to talk about reality. Somebody who tries to minimally decipher what it means to exist, so to speak. What's the point of this thing that is called life? If you haven't done it for yourself, and if you are not interested enough in thinking out of nowhere, somehow you have reached that the conclusion, the logical conclusion is, yeah, you know what? I will completely give up on my possibility of thinking. If that has been the case, go ahead and try to, at the very least, consume something from others who have done your homework, so to speak. That one that you completely decided to ignore. Go and do that. That's good knowledge. That's minimally interesting knowledge. More fulfilling that the vast majority of, once again, entertainment for the sake of entertainment. But yeah, I don't know. Uh, I won't say I am done. Give me 1 minute. Let me drink some water and let me think. What else did I yet again miss in this whole topic? Yeah, this one funny thing, funny notion. Uh, Something that I found out later on. Knowledge is bad. Being aware about certain things is negative. Be, Once again, being given awareness, realizing what is reality about and such things is hurtful. Such many similar sentences of the sort. Addressing that particularly. Two things. Firstly, unless you have a particular real example of that, um, most of the times that's like a justification of I don't care enough to try and learn. I have heard that it is bad, and I am going to altogether abandon the possibility of learning because other people say that it is uncomfortable, that it isn't as pleasant somehow. I haven't done it myself, but I don't need to because surely everyone is telling the truth around me. That has been surely the case, and that is surely the case on something that seems to assist so many people in so many useful ways. That's that has to be a reality, unavoidably. That learning is bad. Okay, that's the first thing, and the second thing is, and in the case of certain ideas that are quite disturbing in nature, and there is also something funny. We're not. This isn't about human depression. No, this is about human efforts. If you see something bad, if you are truly given quote unquote gurus knowledge, you're given the possibility of trying to change it. Oh wow, my god, it's so hard. It's life is so complicated. This one thing that I have been made aware of is so horrible. I cannot do it. Have you even tried? I mean, I guess it that's the way to go. To be even more negative, to gain something that looks kind of negative and to accept it as natural and to not even try to see if there is any way in which you can change it. I guess. But no, okay, for 1 second. No sarcasm here. No, indeed no. The reality isn't as incredibly toxic as we like to make it sometimes. Um, and sometimes, yeah, uh, certain discoveries are quite horrible. Certain ideas can literally make you cry for days. It will happen, perhaps, if you were to venture enough into the world of ideas, or their knowledge about the past, for example, the reality of something very, very good that I heard, the expression of traumatizing yourself willingly with the past actions of our civilization or the present atrocities that are still happening in, in in this moment, in this very moment. Even those things have some way, at the very least, either you're being given the possibility, if it is from the past, to learn how to avoid all of the negative consequences, or on the other hand, you are somehow gifted with the chance of trying to see if you can assist somewhat what is so evidently bad. Because if it is bad, then you are given the possibility of trying to change it. Once again, no, this is not about saying, wow, yeah, it's so hard. It's so incredibly hard. If you don't try, you don't even know if it is hard. Sometimes, on regards to human efforts, something very funny is sometimes the ball, the snowball, just needs to start rolling before it becomes a complete cascade of efforts, all together combined for a certain thing. It starts by the individual, so to speak, um, as well as the downfall of any society starts by the individual, and the uprising of it also starts by the individual. It doesn't happen that any particular individual is devoid of the possibility of assisting on this world. That is the reality, and that is something that you can learn about. So that is, I guess, main message. And don't even trust what I say. If I say something, assume that it is wrong and try to see how you can prove it to be such. But yeah, so far, no. Sadly enough, if you end up finding out knowledge that is somehow horrible, now you have the burden of perhaps aligning your efforts with the solution to that knowledge that seems to be bad. Because something funny also happens. Something. The notion of a problem itself, something that takes too much time to understand. If you can see a problem, it means that you can understand it as something that can have a solution. If you can only see a completely negative thing, That is a different reality. But a problem is something that can be solved. That you are willing to change it is a different discussion. But the human is quite naive in terms of, oh yeah, there are so many problems, and how many of them are you trying to solve? How many of them are you trying to care about and trying to deal with in any way? There are a thousand different problems, and there were even more before in the past, certainly. But does that mean anything at all to any degree? Are you involved in any of those things, or is it just a saying? Is it just a random idea that crosses your mind? Like, yeah, there are so many clouds in the sky, there are so many problems in the world. Does it even mean anything? Or are you just saying it for the sake of saying it? I, I but yeah. Anyway, that's it. I think I have been going around circles for the last 2 minutes. Yet again, let me start the ritual of drinking water as I try to see what else did I forget. Yeah, another thing, thank you. Another thing, another important notion. Knowledge is hard to acquire. No. Shut up. Thank you, but no, you're wrong. There are certain things that I can have some bit of sympathy. No, you're not even trying. The fact that you're not even trying is not my problem. The fact that you're unwilling to give it an opportunity, to give it a go, to see truly if it is so hard, so impossible to learn, is not my problem. Knowledge is, once again, we are perhaps in one of the most easily accessible knowledge type of eras. There has not been such an opportunity nowadays to gain knowledge about certain things. And those certain things are in so many different fields that you will be amazed by such a reality. Now, if you are talking about very particular, very specific things, yeah, I can believe that. But generalization such as, yeah, obtaining knowledge is hard. No, it isn't hard. If you can't apply yourself to make sense out of the world, if you can't apply yourself to try and discover anything, that's not my problem. And that shouldn't be the problem of anyone else. Do you want the reality? Here, the negativity affects more than what you can realize. Sometimes it is better for you to shut up, perhaps. Or not the reality also is the world is uncaring, certainly. But it doesn't mean that your negativity is justified. You should at the very least try to think for yourself. Does it truly serve any real purpose to be so insistently pessimistic about the stuff? Does it truly give me any benefit in life to say that it is so hard to learn? Do I truly gain anything by saying, yeah, I have completely lost the opportunity of learning. I am not going to any particular institution. I'm not blessed by the opportunities that everyone else has had in life. I cannot learn. I have been robbed out of the possibility of learning. I hate this world. Does it? I mean, neurochemically speaking, it feels good. After all, hatred triggers some some pathways associated with adrenaline. But is it truly meaningful to be always angry in such a way to say, yeah, everything is so bad? is it truly beneficial to do it? After all, such pathways end up getting literally destroyed by being overly consumed and so persistently utilized. But I don't know, I guess it can happen. And when it happens, nobody has anything to truly say against it. So, once again, the world is an uncaring place. Perhaps it's a problem of the world. I cannot believe it. The world is such a bad place. I will abandon all of my responsibilities and say that the world was the one who destroyed me. Wow. Anyway, now I guess I don't have anything else to say. It is 9 a.m. for me. Thank you very much for coming to my TED talk. Also, I know I thought I ran out of water. I have a final sip. This is it. Yeah. Anyway, perhaps not perhaps. I should try to minimally be committed to anything in life. At the end of the month, the last week of the month, we will try to daily stream, perhaps. But yeah. Anyway, until then, expect inconsistency from me, aka expect the unexpected. Well, uh, so yeah. Anyway, can we even raid? Question mark. Is it even possible to raid? Uh, is it even a given chance that we have? Uh, perhaps I don't even feel like doing it. It's overly complicated. So yeah. Anyway, have a nice life. Have a nice day. And yeah, if it wasn't understandable enough, human efforts. Try to have some. Try to do something that feels fulfilling. And yeah, it's hard. No, it at the end of the day, it might as well not be that hard. It's more like a justification to give up more easily on the dreams to say, yeah, it's hard. I mean, is it truly hard? It's complicated. It's exhausting, but hard. I don't think so. It, but yeah. Anyway, have a nice life. Take care. Drink water. Uh, Rest properly. Also, but yeah. Anyways, until the next episode. Wow.